Welcome to the Planet Pulse Pacific podcast. My name is Ben Adelberg and I'm coming to you from Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland. Tēnei ka mihi ke te mana whenua o Aotearoa.
And g'day, I'm Emma Strutt and I'm talking to you from Darumbal country in Queensland. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, waters and community. Finally, if you find value in this poddy, please help us get the word out there, share it with a friend, or consider buying us a coffee if you'd like to help support our work. Andre Borell is an impact filmmaker, investor, and the co-founder and director of the Envoy Foundation. And one of our absolute favourites here on the podcast, a self-described maker of good trouble, Andre is driven by a love of marine life and a commitment to leaving the world better than he found it. He specialises in building businesses, brands, and films that challenge the status quo and create real positive impact. After witnessing the devastation of shark nets in Australia, he turned that conviction into action through his documentary Envoy Shark Cull. And it's been a hot minute since we talked to Andre last, so we're keen to dive right in. Andre, thank you for joining us again.
Thanks for having me. It has been a minute, but it also, it feels like it's been forever, but it also could have been last week.
Well, actually, it was meant to be last year, if you're really asking. Andre, it's the third time we've had you on the show, and it feels like it's the third different location we're talking to you. It was Sydney the first time around, your home or of origin. Singapore, which was, we spoke to you when you were there, and what a wonderful platform it was for you business-wise, networking, and just the ability to connect. But now you're in Aotearoa, New Zealand, Marlborough Sounds of all places. What's life like down there?
Yeah, a bit of a sea change, that's for sure. I really enjoyed Singapore, to be honest. I could live in Singapore indefinitely, I feel, but it's challenging as an outsider. You have to get a visa every year and things like that. It's quite challenging to get permanent residency. They also do things an interesting way, which is a tangent, but they're quite open about having racial quotas there. So they only let a certain amount of various different races, and they try and maintain their balance. So as someone in the other category, which is myself over there, quite difficult. So anyway, got a bit sick of the year-to-year rolling visa, always uncertainty. Decided to look for a sea change. Really didn't know where or what, but I just had this dream of like, where can you have like forest and ocean and sort of like multiple things, sort of a bit of a over the top wish list, to be honest. And yeah, this place kind of just ticked all the boxes. Amazing marine wildlife and things like that. Amazing forest. It was excellent. So as an Australian, it's super simple, super easy to come here. So a bit of a long-winded answer as to how I got here, but absolutely loving it. Literally yesterday, I think, have been here for a year. So really, really, really enjoying it.
Well, for most of us, we don't publish the video, but to our listeners, what we're seeing is your backdrop is exactly what you've described. There's ocean, there's trees, there's a whole bunch of greenery. And New Zealand's going through a bit of a wet patch at the moment. It is looking a little bit grey and gloomy, but it's brilliant. And speaking of being out in nature, you had, it's always good to mention adventures like this, but you had a fantastic trip near the end of last year, which is why we couldn't get you on the show, because you were busy climbing a mountain somewhere. How was that trip?
Yeah, it was really good. I'd booked this trip to Nepal years ago. Like, I mean, 5 years prior or something like that, pre-COVID, with the Kiwi company, with Adventure Consultants, which is quite good, reputable company that have been running Himalayan expeditions for a long time. And then COVID happened, and then I kind of had this trip booking, I guess, credit sitting with them. And every year it just didn't quite work out. Like, I couldn't get there. I was too busy with film stuff or campaign stuff or whatever it might be. Just, no, not this year. I'll do it next year. Not this year. I'll do it next year. And it just kept getting bumped and bumped and bumped. And last year I was like, no, I'm doing it. I'm going. So went and did what most people probably go there to do, which is part of the expedition was Everest Base Camp trek. So a couple of weeks doing that. And then that was really mainly for acclimatization reasons, and then went and climbed a peak there, Island Peak, or Imjatse is the local name, which is 6,189 meters, I believe. We did it in after basically a week of snow, a week of blizzard conditions. So it's supposed to be quite an easy climb, but it was not.
It's all relative.
It is all relative. That was a hard day. I was a bit under the weather too, so it sucked. It was just suffering, like literally suffering for 18 hours, 20 hours, whatever it was. But a good experience nonetheless. I dragged my poor brother along, who is 15 years older than me, and yeah, he was like, "Oh, you reckon I'm up to it?" I was like, "Yeah, it's easy. You'll be fine. You'll be fine." And he was. Look, he summited and he did it. He did everything. He didn't bail out of anything. But I think our first few days of trekking, when you fly into Lukla and you start to sort of gain altitude and things like that, I think he was like, "Oh, what have I gotten myself into here?" But we got the job done. It was good.
Amazing.
So apart from all of your adventures, you're a very busy man. You've got your fingers in a lot of different pies. So what's been taking up most of your energy since we checked in with you last?
Yeah. Isn't that a good question? Still, largely, majority of my time is on the shark campaign in Australia. So what the film was about and what we've spoken about before, which is to try and bring the bather protection program or the shark control program, depending which state you're in Australia, into the 21st century. So they're currently culling programs out there to catch and kill as many sharks as possible, hoping that is a proxy for beach safety. Trying to bring that program kind of out of the dark ages to something a little bit more modern. So been spending a lot of time on that, a bit of time on some new film projects as well. I just watched what should be a final cut of something this morning. But also, interestingly, I've been spending a little bit more time on trying to approach that shark issue in Australia from a slightly different angle. So I've spent 5 years now since the release of the film doing petitions and letter writing campaigns and lobbying and trying to, like, all the traditional kind of campaigning ways to move that in the right direction. And I think I think it's worked. I think it's definitely shifted community sentiment. I think more people understand the issue. I think it's slowly at a politician's pace, which is not fast, heading in the right direction. However, I'm also kind of attacking that from a different angle now as well, which is more of a commercial angle. So trying to provide business solutions to both government but also community to move that issue in the right direction. So a year and a half, 2 years ago, I invested in what was basically a prototype product. Sort of, it was a fabric that you could use with neoprene to make shark bite resistant wetsuits. And I thought that was a product that should exist. That's a great safety tool where people can take safety into their own hands a little bit more. And since doing that and sort of taking what was just a concept and helping to commercialize it, I've realized that maybe there's more progress to be made here by developing innovative commercial solutions and offering them to government than there is in just, constantly poking them and prodding them and antagonizing them and calling them out for all their BS. That definitely moves the needle. But yeah, it's not that I think I've achieved all I can with that campaigning approach, but I just think a fresh approach might be needed. So yeah, initially invested in this shark bite resistant wetsuit technology, helped to commercialize it, but now that business is also morphing to offer other solutions. So the wetsuit, for example, is sort of a last line of defense. It's something you can take and you can wear, and you can give yourself a fighting chance if the worst does happen. But ideally, you want to avoid the worst from happening as well. So developing some products in that space to either offer to government or to offer to individuals, so you can actually avoid shark bites from happening. That all sounds a bit vague. So one example of that is drone surveillance, which already happens in New South Wales and Queensland and a couple of other places. However, doing autonomous drones on DJI hardware and with an AI model that can spot and detect sharks and detect what species it is and then alert surf lifesaving if it's a potential risk or not. So that's one example where want to move that business from being a wetsuit business a shark bite resistant wetsuit business to a full like shark bite mitigations solution business. And yeah, I just think the more solutions there are and the more readily available they are to government, the quicker this is going to move in the right direction.
You mentioned drones, so let's talk about that because there's been a report, Queensland, I think, Shark Smart drone report. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. So Queensland for the last 4 years, so 2020 through 2024, have been trialing shark spotting drones. I mean, I won't go into this too much, but slightly unnecessary because drones have been quite well proven in New South Wales and are already quite widely used in New South Wales. But this is how governments work. They've got to trial things. They've got to do pilot programs, blah, blah, blah. So they spent 4 years trialing drones. And basically the results that came out is something we already knew and something we'd already been advocating for because they're successfully used elsewhere, which is they're excellent at spotting sharks. They are more effective at spotting sharks than shark nets or drum lines are at catching sharks, basically. So that's sort of the headline. Now you can go into all sorts of different levels of detail on that. On some areas, drones are less effective because the water's not that clear. That's fine. There's other solutions for those areas. Some areas, drones are fantastic because nice and clear water and so on and so forth. But look, the headline is drones are better at spotting sharks than nets and drumlines are at catching them. That then puts the power into the hands of surf lifesavers who operate this drone in partnership with the government, who operate this drone program to make educated beach safety decisions. Where is the shark? Where is it headed? How big is it? What species is it? Is it a concern? Do we need to close the beach? Do we not? What do we do? So what the report really showed is not only is it an invaluable beach safety tool, but it also far outperforms nets and drum lines, which are really like what these results showed is nets and drum lines are sort of a bit of a Hail Mary. Like you're putting some hooks out there and you're putting some nets out there and you're kind of hoping that maybe they'll possibly catch and kill a shark that might have possibly swam in and been near people and potentially been a risk. Like it's this whole yeah, it's really not very scientific, put it that way. Whereas drones are a much more calculated approach. We'll have eyes in the sky. We will have surf lifesavers who know what they're doing and know what they're looking at with those eyes in the sky, and will make the appropriate decisions. There was a few beaches where drones underperformed nets and drum lines. However, it should be noted that the drones were only in the air for around 3% of the time that nets and drum lines are in the water. And that being in the report was actually the catalyst for reaching out to an AI developer friend of mine and being like, hey, is there a solution here where we could get eyes in the sky for more time with autonomous drones rather than, these poor surf lifesaving volunteers who have to sit there, fly the drone, fly it back. It's all very manual, very time consuming. So yeah, look, the report proved that these are an invaluable beach safety tool, a far better beach safety tool than shark nets and drum lines. And yeah, that was sort of one of the catalysts for going, hey, maybe even that can be improved upon. That's fantastic. But what if you could do it autonomously? That would mean you could have eyes in the sky for longer, for more often, and so on and so forth.
And you've got the added benefits of potentially reducing drownings with the drones.
That's the funny thing about shark spotting drones is they're going to save a lot of lives, but not from avoided shark bites because shark bites are very, very rare. But they're going to save a lot of drownings, absolutely, and they've already assisted in those sorts of situations. So yeah, they're there for sharks, and they're an invaluable safety tool for that. As much of a low risk proposition that is, it is not zero risk, but drowning is far more common. It's going to be a very, very useful for situations like that too.
So what do you see as the future for the autonomous drones then? Like if I'm a beach goer, could I expect a drone to be flying over me, say like every 30 minutes doing a sweep of the beach, or where do you see that kind of ending up?
Yeah, so the DJI hardware that we're developing this platform on it's basically a dock solution. So the dock is somewhere permanent, like on the roof of the lifeguard tower, maybe, just as an example. Dock opens, it's all closed up and sealed for weather reasons, providing it passes and it has a little weather station on top. Provided it passes all the weather checks and it's suitable to fly, dock opens, drone takes off, flies. It does have about 40 to 50-minute flight time, this drone. However, the area you want to sweep, you could probably do in about 20 minutes. Then it's returned back. It will recharge that battery that it's used in about 15, 20 minutes, and then it can go again. And it can just cycle all day, basically. Whereas the current very manual approach is, I believe they are also flying every half hour, approximately. They don't come back to a dock. They come back to like a table where a surf lifesaver's sitting, and he manually changes the batteries. But still, same. Flies about every half hour. The problem is, because it's so manual, they're only flying for very limited time windows. Like, I'm talking 8 till 12 sort of thing. And that's not really enough coverage, I feel. And yeah, look, as an example of why that's not enough coverage, is there was a fatal shark bite last year off Bribie Island in Brisbane. Happened at a beach that had this drone pilot program happening at it. However, all the flights were in very limited hours. I believe in that location it was only during school holidays, and only from 8 till 12. And this shark bite happened just after school holidays and at 4 p.m. So even if it were during school holidays, there wouldn't have been drones in the sky. So it shows that, to me, 8 till 12 on school holidays doesn't cut it. Why not use the technology that's available, put some eyes in the sky, basically. You could do it for the all daylight hours every day, 365 days a year.
Well, you don't tell sharks when their feeding time is, so you've got to be from dusk till dawn. So what's the biggest hindrance now? Is it cost? Is it a cost thing? Getting enough drones, training personnel, paying for personnel to be looking after these drones, specifically paying for the development of the. Is it a cost thing? Is that really where it's at the moment, or
look at the current program with manual flights? So some of the limiting factors is just from a HR point of view, just having enough people and trained people. So that is a perspective. Also, cost is an element, no doubt. Having said that, Queensland just announced $88 million of funding to go towards the issue of sharks in Queensland. Now, unfortunately, a lot of that is going to go towards catching and killing a bunch more sharks, because the current program, the current government in Queensland is, they're not the most environmentally focused government, I'll say.
Putting it politely.
That is putting it very politely. So there was an election, whatever it was, 18 months ago-ish, quite a big backward step, I would say, environmentally speaking. So they've gone and announced a bunch of funding to be tough on sharks, but a bunch of that's going to go to catching and killing a heap more. Having said that, they do claim that a lot of that funding is going to go to modern technology and research and development of new solutions and things like that. So there's no firm plans behind that yet. There is no actual concrete, and here's what we're going to spend it on and here's how we're going to do it. But it's a thing they've said. So take it with a grain of salt, like all the other things that politicians say. So yes, funding is obviously a challenge. However, with this issue, it is kind of, governments sort of do give their departments sort of an open checkbook, like a blank check kind of situation here. They are not scared to throw money at this issue. Just need to basically make sure as much of that money flows to modern solutions, and ideally zero of that money flows towards continuing to catch and kill sharks, which we've disproven to work.
I suppose at the end of the day, governments are always going to go with what gets them the votes. And in Australian summer, it's always a contentious time regarding the narrative around sharks. This summer has been a bit of a pressure cooker for that. We saw 4 shark attacks in the period of 48 hours, I think it was. And of course, the
Sydney,
media was very fast to jump on that, as was all the political commentary that came after it. And, I'm not trying to downplay the pain that's associated with that for the families and the communities that are affected. But there's been the debates again, and there's been the renewed calls for shark culls. So, what patterns do you notice when these events happen? Like, what tends to get lost in the conversation when this kind of tragedy occurs?
A lot gets lost in a conversation, to be honest, because you've got the dominant media in Australia being Murdoch papers driving the narrative, and they lean quite heavily right, and they any excuse to put some photoshopped image of a shark with gnashing teeth on the front cover and call for culling of sharks. There's a couple of op-ed writers that they love to platform who are just absolute Fruit Loops. So a lot gets lost in the nuance, including just the most basic facts. The most basic facts get lost. For example, after these 4 shark bites in New South Wales in 48 hours, 2 of which were at beaches with shark nets, you have the Premier of New South Wales. You have Chris Minns, just to give an example of what, just the basic facts get lost. You get the Premier of Minns standing, Premier of New South Wales, Chris Minns, standing up and saying, because there had been talk of trialing removal of shark nets a while ago, as in 6 months ago ish. You get him standing up and saying, they then put that trial on hold a while ago in response to another shark bite. Long story short, he then gets up this time and says, look, this has kind of cemented our position. We're certainly not looking at removing shark nets at this point. As far as I'm aware, none of these 4 shark bites that have just happened are at shark bites that have just happened are at beaches with shark nets. That's just wrong. 2 of them were. So you've got the Premier, the leader of the state, standing up, just giving grossly incorrect information, which has the unintended consequence of feeding this narrative that shark nets work or do something. If you're going up and saying, yeah, these 4 bites, they're tragic and they're bad, but as far as I'm aware, none of them happened at beaches with shark nets, therefore we're scrapping our trial to remove shark nets, and you're wrong, like that's not that. So that's a very basic thing that can get lost in the nuance. What usually gets lost in the nuance, or the nuance that gets lost, sorry, I should say, in these incidents, but actually didn't this time, is all the different factors that come into play as to why this incident may not have happened. Sometimes all that nuance gets lost because the reporters just don't understand it. Sometimes it gets lost because you don't want to even remotely appear to be blaming the victim. But sometimes there are environmental conditions at play that were a factor in the incident happening. That was definitely a case in these 4 New South Wales bites. It had been after heavy rain. There was filthy water outflows, like the bull sharkiest of all bull shark conditions, right? You couldn't have paid me to get in the water. But that is not common knowledge, which is a problem. So you did have people going in the water in what was a heightened risk period. And then unfortunately these things happen. Usually that would get lost. Usually I would not see conditions or any of that sort of thing being part of the story. But in this instance, it was. There's all this story about what makes for riskier conditions. Why does outflows and heavy rain make things a higher activity time for bull sharks? Does Sydney's old, quite crappy sewage system, which overflows into the harbour, have something to do with this, et cetera, et cetera? So it actually was part of the conversation, which I thought was refreshing and super important, because the more we do, if we're scared of having that conversation of like, okay, these conditions may have led to this incident happening. If we're scared of having that conversation because we don't want to appear to be blaming the victim, or because we don't, whatever, if we're scared of having that, well, then no one's going to learn these things. No one's going to understand, we're not going to move forward our collective knowledge of what's a riskier time, what's not. We're not going to, it's important to have these conversations. I was pleasantly surprised that it actually was part of the conversation this time.
Who did that narrative come from? Was it journalists, or was it being fed in from other sources? Because is that where another opportunity lies in terms of this whole education process? Is we write into governments but there's change. Every election there's change. You've got to start again. There's you spoke about investing, but what about flipping the narrative on the education and saying, look, yes, we've got to get nets out, but really we can't control that. How about how we control to minimize our own risks?
Yes, it is. Look, and again, these bites happen in New South Wales, so we'll focus on New South Wales here. New South Wales do have, as in the government themselves, do have a Shark Smart education program, right? However, and be cautious after heavy rains and in murky conditions. That has been part of their messaging for as long as I can remember, but it's clearly not cutting through. Like if you do a poll of, I don't know, Sydney-siders and see how many people actually know that, it's probably in the single digit percent, right? Like it's not as common knowledge as I walk down to the beach and I see red and yellow flags and I know what that means, right? What you'd say close to 100% of Australians know that. We're certainly not at that level for nowhere near that for Shark Smart behaviours. So there is this government Shark Smart education program. However, it's clearly not cutting it. So, and again, that is something where we're trying to, as you say, maybe step in and fill that void. Some things government are okay at, some things they really, really suck at, right? So we've actually looked at that and been like, okay, how can we, and when I say we, I mean collectively all the people that work in this space, right? All the organizations, all the activists, how can we be collectively better at this? I'd had a project on my mind for a while, and it was sort of on my to-do list, and these shark bites bumped it to the top, and I'm now almost finished with it, of creating like basically a comic book, like a Shark Smart comic book for kids. So it's like 30-ish pages, like one key sort of message per page of like, be careful in these conditions, or if you see this, be careful, or don't wear this because of X, Y, Z. So yeah, look, education is absolutely key, and government have been trying clearly to, achieving limited outcomes. So I think it's something that we can and will be doing more of. But I would love the same amount of people to know that if it's just piss down rain for a week and the harbour's brown, that I am not getting in that because that's going to be bull sharky AF. I would love the same number of people to know that as what's a red and yellow flag mean down at the beach. Like, that's what I'd like us to get to collectively as, Australians are a very beach-going nation, a very ocean-going nation, a very water-focused. So I think it's important.
So we get to the stage where it's basically slip, slop, slap, don't swim after rain. Like it's just common knowledge.
I've been trying to come up with a mnemonic or something like that, actually. The best I've come up with so far is if the water's brown, the bulls are in town.
That's pretty good.
It's not bad. I was trying to get rain into there. Like if the water's brown because of rain, the bulls are in town. And if Blake loses it loses
equal pain.
Yeah. But yeah. If the water's brown, the bulls are in town. Might not be 100% accurate all the time in terms of sometimes you could be around brown water and there won't be any bulls around. But, I think that's a starting point to start getting messages like that out there for sure. Just something catchy that people remember and can think of. And when you're about to go jump in for a surf or whatever, and it's absolute terrible visibility because it's just been pissing down for a week, that makes you go, I might recalculate the risk on this one.
Yeah.
I mean, you've talked about your book. Hopefully that comic book gets, into schools and just everyone knows about it. But you've got another book coming out soon, Great White Lies. We see that on the website. Love the name, very clever. So tell us about that. What sparked your motivation to put pen to paper?
Basically, a lot's happened really since the film came out. It's like five years now. But 5 years since the film came out, and a lot has happened. A lot has happened in that space. There's been there's been changes of government. There's been changes in policy priorities. There's been progress in some areas. There's been regression in some areas. Basically, a lot has happened, and people kept asking me like, "Oh, you're going to do a second film? You've got to do a second film." And I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet on a second film. So this is kind of this is sort of an interim step. It's basically like from where the film finishes, the book picks up, and it also goes way deeper than the film could on stuff. Like you leave so much stuff on the cutting room floor in a film like that. You just can't go into the depth that you can or the nuance you can in writing. So, yeah, that was sort of the motivation from that to pick up where the film left off. I'm saying that the right way around. Pick up where the film left off and kick the can down the road on having to make a sequel, because I'd really rather not have to. I'd really rather just solve the issue.
We have that recorded in our second interview with you. You mentioned that you were working or you were considering a second film, so you can't back out of it. It's in the airwaves.
He's not busy enough.
When do you? No pressure, of course, but when do you have a kind of a target time frame for the book? Because we can pre-order, so.
Yes.
Are we getting close?
Look, I'd say it's like 90% done. I would say it's like 95% of the way there. However, stuff just keeps happening in the space. So it's like, when is it done? At some point, I'm just going to have to call it and go, that's it, finish, send it, go to print, like it's done. It was very similar with the film, to be honest. It's like you've got something that's most of the way there, but then it could just keep adding to it and keep adding to it and keep adding to it, or keep finessing it or whatever. It's not so much about finesse for me on this. It's on the book. It's like, what's the end point? Given that the campaign isn't won and done, and that's your final chapter and finished, it's like, I think it's definitely going to be this year, put it that way. Absolutely. I know it's only Feb, but it's definitely going to be this year, probably early this year. Just going to have to call it and go, okay, that's enough. Send it to print. And then no doubt the story will carry on. And maybe that's the sequel, as in the film sequel.
Yeah. Well, with a book, you can always do a revised edition. So 5-year anniversary, revised edition, easy. So
true.
Oh, we look forward to it. Yep. We really do. Now, some big news for this year, and I think it's been works in for a while, and that's the formal name is the Agreement on Marine Biological Diversity of Areas Beyond National Jurisdiction. So I'm glad they simplified it to the UN High Seas Treaty. Mm-hmm. Give us a snapshot overview. What is the UN High Seas Treaty? And then, let's then talk about what that actually means, because it's great when we have something formalized, but does it actually mean anything? So what does it all mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's basically each nation that borders an ocean has some jurisdiction over part of the ocean there. There's its actual there's different phases of it, but the largest of it is its exclusive economic zone, EEZ. That covers, as in all the nations that border oceans or have some claim over coastlines, that is about 50% of the ocean is covered by these various different types of territorial claims over ocean, including the broadest one being the EEZ. And then the other 50%, these are round numbers, it's not the exact numbers, but the other 50% is international waters. No one's got a territorial claim there, no laws apply there, no nothing. It's literally like the Wild West. So what this has attempted to do, the High Seas Treaty, in very broad strokes, is to put some guidelines and put some framework around that. Essentially, sort of international law in a way. But to your second point, as what is it and how's it going to work and so on and so forth, the question for me, and the question always with these things, any sort of international agreement, international law, international treaty, whatever it might be, is going to be, enforceability. You see this with international law at the moment with various conflicts going on around the world. Arguably, some of the aggressors in those conflicts are, in breach of international law, but it's not enforceable. Like, what's anyone actually going to do about it? So that's that. Like any sort of international jurisdiction like that, that is the concern here. But look, broad strokes, it's better than nothing, and progress is better than perfection. So it's a step in the right direction. It's a step in the right direction from nothing to something. And my hope would be for you know countries that don't play ball, that there's ways to force them to play ball. I think people that don't or countries that don't stick to agreements like this, especially when you're talking about the ocean and protecting biodiversity and trying to keep things sustainable for everyone. I think people that don't play by those rules, or countries that don't play by those rules, it's fair to sort of coerce them to do so through economic means or through whatever it might be.
Does that maybe bring a little bit of hope down the line in terms of shark protection? Could that be another platform through which it gets elevated?
Yeah, I mean, there's yes, there is. Having said that, there is. Again, I just go back to the enforceability thing again, and I'll give you an example. Right, a lot of shark and ray species are protected under CITES. CITES being I always get the acronym wrong, Convention for International Trade of Endangered Species. Yes, I believe that's right. Yep. So that kind of is to me, that's kind of a nonsensical thing anyway. Why are you having the international trade of endangered species? But anyway, CITES is a body that regulates the trade of international trade of endangered species, such as sharks, rays, all sorts of other things as well. So when they're caught, and they're to be, if you're caught just for use within a country's borders, essentially country's boundaries, CITES doesn't apply. It's only when there's export. It's only when you're exporting or importing. Now, certain species are on various lists or various appendix for CITES regulating that international trade. Again, about enforceability, a lot of this stuff is they're on a list and they're either not supposed to be imported or exported at all. Well, obviously, you have to export first for someone else to be able to import. But they're either not supposed to be at all, or it's only supposed to be done under certain conditions or whatever it might be. But the reality is you can, for example, with shark fins, you can sneak a bunch of shark fins of whatever species, no matter how endangered they are, in with a shipment of other shark fins that aren't CITES listed, and kind of get away with it. So that again, progress over perfection, though. I guess you've got to say it's better than nothing, right? Like having some sort of hurdles up and some sort of rules, and some, people kind of do have to do dodgy things in order to trade in these endangered species. I mean, that is better than nothing. However, when these things go through ports basically unchecked, or the checking is basically picking up a dried shark fin and looking at it and going, okay, and not doing, for example, DNA testing on it to see what species of shark it actually is. A lot of the times these things are maybe not worth the paper they're written on. However, and that is obviously a fear with the High Seas Treaty. However, I don't want to play all doom and gloom. It is absolutely better than nothing, and a stepping stone to stronger and stronger and stronger stuff. But I guess the message I'm trying to get across is all of this stuff is only worth something if there is actual supervision and enforcement and repercussions.
But then, closer to home, you've mentioned all these species. With our shark nets and our drum lines, like, how many of these species are getting caught up in that?
Exactly, and that's not governed by CITES because they're not being exported. So, like a lot of these species being killed are restricted for international trade by CITES to varying levels. Either you can't do it at all, or you can, but you have to prove that your fishery is sustainable or whatever. There's different levels of protection within CITES listed species. But yes, a lot of these sharks caught, or other animals caught by shark nets and drum lines, do have protection under CITES. However, because you're not exporting it, doesn't apply. So
bit hypocritical.
It is a bit hypocritical, yeah. So what it shows is, so there's clearly been an international agreement at CITES conventions that this species we need to protect, and this species we need to protect, and this one goes on appendix this, and this one goes on appendix that. That's an agreement internationally, right? But then this program, for example, the shark culling programs in New South Wales and Queensland, they're exempt from it because they're not exporting. So you've got nations agreeing on something, you've got scientists agreeing on something, everyone agrees we should be protecting these species. But then there's always loopholes. And in this instance, the loophole is CITES protection doesn't apply because you're not exporting them. Then there's Australian federal environment legislation, which would stop a lot of these species being killed as well. Again, there's a loophole for that, which we don't have all day, so I won't go too deep into that loophole. But basically, these programs existed before the environment law in Australia existed. Therefore, they don't need approval. They don't need a permit. They don't need anything. They're basically grandfathered in. Yeah. So they existed prior. They're allowed to operate as they are. So there's all these examples, we can talk about so many of them: CITES, high seas treaties, federal environment law, state biodiversity conservation laws. There's all this stuff. But fairly strong agreement that this stuff should exist, what species should be listed. There's a strong scientific basis for them being listed. But then a lack of enforcement or a sneaky loophole there or an exemption over there, it makes them, again, not meaningless. I don't want to be too doom and gloom about it, but again, I'm just making the same point. These things are only as strong as the enforcement. And if you're handing out exemptions willy-nilly or loopholes willy-nilly, or you just simply don't put resources towards a department or an entity to go and enforce this.
Look, it's like climate change, right? The science is strong, yet Australia, New Zealand, what are we doing, right? So it's pretty much the same argument. Now, I want to give a little shout out to your website. I think in the last episode, I think it was just being revamped and so on, because Envoy Foundation has, at the time you mentioned that it was expanding to be more encompassing of conservational work, so not just sharks and environmental. And there's a particular part on your website and news, the Envoy Journal. Fantastic. Lots of amazing pieces of content, everything from why we shouldn't be eating fish or reducing our intake of that to climate change related articles. Some brilliant content. Really, to our listeners, you should get on there, subscribe, and get that content into your inbox, and give a little donation as well to support the work. But it's all interrelated, isn't it? I mean, you're passionate about one stream, but it touches so many other areas when we talk about conservation and talk about rehabilitating our planet and getting it to a point where, again, it's actually functioning as it should and not giving us all this mad weather and everything else that's coming with it at the moment.
Yeah, it's really, you're right. I mean, we're talking about sharks a lot now, and obviously what brought me into this space is sharks, but really my interest is much broader than that, much broader than that. I just want not only a livable planet, but my dream, my version of utopia is a planet that looks a little bit more like it used to before there was billions and billions of us around. You know what I mean? And have devastated it with the amount of resource extraction we do, the amount of CO2 we pump into the atmosphere, so on and so forth. So I'd give anything to be able to see the planet how it was a few thousand years ago and experience the biodiversity and the abundance and all those sorts of things. So, these articles are one example. The film that's already out is one example. The stuff I've got coming out soon is another example. They're all just little ways I think, to plant seeds, make people a little bit more aware, because everyone's busy. Cost of living's high. Everyone's trying to put a roof over their head, put food on the table, look after their families, prioritize all that. Absolutely, totally understandable. That has to be everyone's number one priority. But if there's a bit of bandwidth left, if we can create a bit of extra bandwidth where we can be a bit more aware, we can think about some more of these issues, we can get a little bit more of this information out there and to people's eyeballs, or or ears, or whatever it might be. I think I think that's important, and it can slowly shift us in a positive direction. Having said that, I think the main people that need to be hearing and thinking about a lot of these things are policymakers. And a lot of the time, they probably are aware. They probably know what direction we need to head, and they probably know that, our current food system. You're talking about, one of the blog articles you mentioned there. One of the news articles was about diet. They probably know that our current way of farming is not the right way to do things. It's not the right way to feed a population. It's not the healthiest. It's terrible for the planet, so on and so forth. But, if they're not going to make policy to rectify that, then that's kind of where everything falls over a little bit. So yeah, it's great to get the information out there, and more people need to be aware of it. More people need to vote based on it. Absolutely. But yeah, there's only so much change you can make in your own life. I think a lot of it does have to be policy driven. So yeah.
So when are you going to politics?
I still touch on that in my book, to be honest, because the whole book, the whole Great White Lies, is a good chunk of it is about politics. Like literally, this whole shark issue in Australia. It's all politics, and yeah, I actually touch on that at the end of the book, because people do say that to me. They're like, "You should go into politics," and I'm like,
"This is why he's moved to New Zealand."
I can't. Maybe I'll get there, but at the moment, I feel like I'd achieve more outside of that particular machine than inside it. But maybe that'll change. Politicians, actually, there are a few good politicians. Sometimes I hang a lot of crap on them, and most of the time it's rightly deserved. But I do feel like I overgeneralize sometimes. There are some good ones, and some of the ones that are very forward thinking. They get it. They do what they can, and it's actually come from a couple of them that are like, you should do this. Like, we need more of you in here. And I'm like, I really appreciate that. It's quite a humbling thing to be told, but also like, I don't know how you do it, as in this is me to them. Like, I don't know how you do it. I'd have my head through a bloody brick wall, I reckon, within the first week. So for now, from the outside, but yeah, who knows?
You talk about the importance of influencing policymakers, but a lot of policymakers are influenced by business. So what about the influence on businesses?
This is very true. It's not really what you're asking, but it makes me think of something that I just want to share. Is one thing you realize is that, like, all politicians can be bought by business, right? There's a 20 grand check here, and then some favorable policy gets made there, and it's very quid pro quo kind of stuff. They look after their mates kind of thing, and their mates donate, and so on and so forth. The thing that's been dawning on me lately on that, and this is maybe from an individual level, but also maybe applying pressure to businesses, is not only can they all be bought, and I don't mean bought as in bribed, as in I'm going to give you this check and you will write this law for me. I doubt it's that explicit most of the time.
Well,
sometimes it might be. Sometimes it might be. But sometimes I think it's more implicit than that. Anyway.
Yeah.
Not only can they be bought, whichever way you want to look at bought meaning, not only can they be bought, but they're not that expensive. They're very cheap. Like, this is the frustrating thing, is like, you're talking multi-million or billion-dollar organizations, right? Like 50 grand checks and get things to go their way. Now, I'm not downplaying how much $50,000 is. It's a lot of money, but they're not as expensive as I'd have thought. I'd have thought to buy a politician, whatever you take that to mean, would be like millions of dollars and, all this kind of stuff. But at least in Australia, and probably New Zealand too, they're actually, quite cheap. So it does make you wonder, instead of fighting that system, how do you how can we use that to our advantage more? Yeah. How do you use that and that might be by pressuring businesses who are donors, and that might be a lot of different a lot of different ways that might be possible. But for sure, I think, it's the problem is policymakers, and how do you bend them to your will is really the question.
Yeah.
And that might be applying pressure and making them fearful of losing their next election, or so using the stick. That might be using the carrot in whatever that way that looks like. But policy, unfortunately. And then the other thing you need to consider, and again, this is very, very, very much the case with the shark issue. A lot of this policy making is driven by media. So the policymaker not heading in the right direction is often not because they don't know it's the right direction, or they don't believe it's the right direction, or they don't want to head that way. It's because, what will this Murdoch paper say about me if I do vote this way, or I do go this? So yes, policymaking is a key lever, and a key, I guess, sticking point for a lot of things. However, what just keeps coming up over and over and over again is there's a secondary lever to that, which is media. And politicians aren't going to do things, generally speaking, that they're fearful they might get crucified in the media for.
Which then comes back to personal interest, because if the media speaks bad, they lose their votes, they don't get elected back in. So at the end of the day, that full circle is back on the policymakers, because your duty is to serve, not be self-serving. Anyway,
well, originally, maybe in days gone by, I don't know how many selfless ones there are in there at the moment. That would be ideally what you want, right? You'd want policymakers in there who do the right thing, irrespective of how some whatever coverage is going to paint it, and they're actually there to move things in the right direction. And if they lose the next election, they lose the next election, but they got good stuff done while they were there. That would be an ideal world. But yes, it's been a real lesson in politics and media and law and all working in this space. It involves so many more things than you would originally imagine it would.
So just to pivot slightly, something else you've been deeply involved with, and we touched on this last time, is the Nordic Whale Reserve. So update time. It's such a huge project. There's a lot of moving parts to try and align, I would imagine. Yep. So where does that project currently stand?
Yeah, absolutely. Good on that topic too. Not really sort of tangent, but before I answer your question, we actually had orca in here in the Queen Charlotte Sound last weekend for the first time. So I'd heard they come through the area here sometimes, and last weekend before, whenever it was, had them for the first time. Very, very, very cool. But yes, as for the reserve, so. We have, I think, I'm trying to think what the update was last time we spoke, but basically we have a site that has been granted to us by a town. Very, very generous, had environmental testing done on that site. It all looks very positive. It is a huge, perfect, really big, really ideal sort of fjord for this kind of project. However, because it's so massive, the cost to create the barrier for that particular site is astronomical. So we still want to do that. However, we're realizing that might not be the first site. That might be site number 2, because realistically, we're going to need multiple anyway. We need multiple for a variety of reasons. First of all, there's a lot of animals in tanks that will need a place to go. Second of all, not sure whether you're going to be able to have, for example, belugas and orcas share the same space. So we're going to need multiple sites anyway. So at the moment, what it's looking like is that's probably going to have to be site number 2. And we have now two additional locations, which are a prospect for site number 1, which are still large in terms of the water, like the actual size of them, the area, the water volume in there, so on and so forth. But they have a much smaller entrance to the fjord, meaning it's much, much smaller and much, much easier to close that off, and create your reserve. So that's basically where we're at the moment. Is trying to decide between those two additional locations, which one is the best one to be probably an initial site. It's like, and it's not even comparable on costs. Like these other sites are probably going to cost 10% of that larger one to get up and running. So that's 90% fundraising that you don't then need to do. You don't need to go find the funds to do. A really supportive town as well. We've found for those sites. So both those fjords are close to the one town. They were the town are the ones that suggested the sites and offered the sites. So just in the process of doing suitability studies on which of the two is better, then environmental studies as well. But basically it's going to get off the ground quicker, and we're going to get whales out of tanks quicker if we go for a smaller site first, rather than try to go with the original site, which is incredible, but it's huge and expensive. So that's sort of the update on that. We've also been working with Norwegian government slowly in terms of because this is such a novel approach in terms of like how you permit it, what permits does it even need, what doesn't it need. Like most of their permitting for like stuff done in the ocean is built around salmon farming, for example. So when you're putting in a structure in the water, that's what would usually apply. However, we're not a salmon farm, so that doesn't actually apply. So how are we going to handle this? So really lucky to have, I'm sure I mentioned this last time, but really lucky to have a local animal welfare charity partner over there who in all their day-to-day work deal with the Norwegian government a lot anyway. So they're the ones dealing with that. So also in terms of also dealing with them in terms of how keeping the animal also works from a permit point of view over there. So there's all these complexities. Whereas, so for example, aquariums aren't legal in Norway. However, this is an aquarium. So they're saying you don't need a permit as long as you don't do X, Y, Z. It's like, okay, well, we're definitely not going to do X, Y, Z, so that's fine. There's all these moving pieces of the puzzle, all these different parts of the framework. But look, the short update is we're probably going to go for a smaller site first. Progress is being made. It is somewhat slower progress than I would like, just because of it involves government, it involves legislation, it involves permitting, it involves, not only does it involve all those things, all the animals that would be coming, none of them are from Norway, because Norway has no aquariums, right? There's no belugas in captivity in Norway, and there's no orcas in captivity in Norway. That they're all elsewhere. So you've also got to then work with, again, this covers CITES issues, international trade of species, and so on and so forth. So many moving parts, but progress is being made, as frustratingly slow as it can be. And hopefully have another update for you, a more substantial update for you next time we talk, because I'm sure we'll do this again. But yeah, progress being made, slow and steady. There's definitely some candidates that we would like to provide a solution for ASAP. Bunch of belugas in a really horrible environment in Canada, in marine land. There's 2 orcas just sitting in a tank of a marine park that's now closed in France. So there's all these candidates that we'd really like to do something for. But the scale of this project and the complexity of this project is pretty significant.
And then there'll be the moving of them as well. So look, it's a first, right? So you got to get it right, and it's world leading. So you've got nothing to kind of model it off in a way. So it's look, So tracking this is phenomenal.
Yeah, it is. I wish it was moving faster. We all wish it. Everyone involved, everyone on the board wishes it was moving faster. But it is. It's never been done before. And again, I don't know whether I mentioned this last time we spoke about it, but there is a project sort of trying to do the same thing in Canada, but they started like 5, 6, 7 years before us, and they're kind of, as far as I'm aware, like behind us don't even, like, all the environmental testing on their sites isn't done, and on their site isn't done, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I do think we're making good pace in the scheme of things and for how complex this is, but it's also, for someone like me who's kind of like a million miles an hour, it's painfully slow, to be frank. But
yeah.
I think it needs to be done. It needs to exist.
Yeah. So with Envoy Foundation, Nordic Well Reserve, all the amazing good work you do, for our listeners, how can they support, get involved? Of course, in Australia, there's a lot of the local campaigns you do at some of the beaches, but I'd say maybe 45% of our listeners are Australian. So there's a lot of non-Australians listen to this. How can they support? How can they get involved?
Yeah, very, very good question. It really depends, like, where your appetite lies and where your interest lies. For Envoy Foundation in general, you already did the plug for me. Thank you. Like, you sign up to our mailing list and check out our website, which is envoy.foundation. No .com, no .au, just envoy.foundation. You can kind of keep abreast of all our campaigns, everything we're working on. We do also have the Envoy Journal with lots of articles and things like that. That's a really good general piece. Then other than that, yeah, anything that particularly interests you, for example, the shark campaign in Australia or the Nordic Whale Reserve campaign, head to those websites, or each of them have social presences. So Nordic Whale Reserve has a LinkedIn page and a Instagram page, so on and so forth. So does the Envoy Film is the social presence for the shark culling stuff, because that was the name of the documentary. We're everywhere. We have a lot of stuff going, but the best presence is the website, or the best location is the website. It sort of covers everything. Sign up to the mailing list, and beyond that, whatever interests you, go follow us there, or sign up there. Obviously, any donations are appreciated to our work. That's fantastic. But just stay in touch with what we're doing. Love to have the support. Love to have you along for the journey. I'm on social, not as much these days, to be honest. I'm a little slack on it, but I'm on social media as well. Feel free to follow me. I'm going to try and get into the habit of posting a little bit more. I guess just website, and then from there, wherever your interest flows.
And the documentary is on Netflix?
Yes, the documentary, of course. Yes. So the original documentary, 5 years old now, is on Netflix in Australia and New Zealand. For international visitors, you might need to, international listeners, you might need to find it somewhere else. Wherever you are, it should be available on, like, Apple, iTunes, or on something like that for rental. Amazon Prime, depending where you are, it'll be available somewhere. But Australia, New Zealand, it's on Netflix. And got some other exciting projects coming out. Like you mentioned, the book. We've got a docu-series coming out, 3 episodes, that's all about Australia's wildlife. Lots of exciting stuff coming. All that waffle, I think what I'm trying to say is website's your best port of call, and sign up to the mailing list so you don't miss anything.
We'll be linking it all in the show notes. And of course, when we promote this episode, it all will be on the socials as well, as we always do, on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and even Blue Sky. Can you believe it? Andre, it's always a treat having you on the show. I don't know if I'm more excited at our next interview as to what country you'll be dialing in from, or actually the progress on all the works. You got a trend to continue here, but so much good stuff as you've covered, and so much to look forward to. Certainly the book that people can already pre-order, but otherwise that will be out soon. And of course, if you're following the mailing list and you're following the socials, you'll know when it's out and ready to buy. And of course, all the other good stuff coming up as well. And for those in New Zealand, I'm not going to say much, but there might be something happening later this year with Envoy. So stay tuned. Follow our socials too, which you should be, Athletes for Nature. Andre, thank you so much. I know it was meant to be last year, but for good reason. We're here now. And as always, we're highly appreciative of the phenomenal work that you do for our planet, for our community. And we cannot wait to see some of these sort of ideas become more of a reality as well. So the Nordic Whale Reserve I've been following for a while, so it's it is a lot of hard work, but it'll be absolutely amazing to see that come to fruition. So again, thank you so much for your valuable time and for the amazing energy that you put into the fight for our great oceans and especially our sharks. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Great to speak with you both. Thanks everyone for listening. And till next time, wherever I may be.